I think I've heard from some of you guys, like a dislike for an echo chamber or maybe even like hyper partisanship or like the idea that if I'm a Democrat and I believe something that's not traditionally Democrat, that's maybe going to cause me to get kicked out like this. That's something all of you have said. In the spirit of reducing polarization, which I think is important, I believe you guys might agree, what are some things that I'm hoping to hear each of you that either specific policy things that you guys disagree either with the general Republican or Democrat, the general Republican status quo, or agree with the Democrat status quo, or disagree amongst yourselves, which I think
we
will
disagree
help.
on a lot amongst
Yeah,
ourselves,
just one
actually.
or a few.
Who wants to go first?
Yeah, who wants to go first?
Well, I will say, I actually spoke with some students about this earlier. I personally, I'm torn on healthcare. I see both sides of the healthcare debate as someone who comes from a family that cannot afford healthcare, including aging parents. And so while I think socialized medicine is no bueno, I also feel like it's really bad when you can't just afford to go like treat your broken arm or something like that. So, I mean, maybe I'm a little bit different than, I don't know if I consider myself a Republican. Obviously, I'm a Trump supporter and a conservative, but I guess maybe I'm slightly different than Republicans in that way, to answer your question. And I do think we actually disagree on like quite a few things.
I may have misunderstood the question. So yeah,
Something we disagree with Republicans on or with each other
Where
on.
we don't fall in line
So-
with
I
Republicans.
thought the question was about how to like bridge the gap of. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sort of. I just
don't
think
know.
that this might help bridge that gap. So, I think to the audience, or at least to me, the perception I get is that you guys are sort of like a Republican institution, I guess. But to combat that or to help bridge polarization, I'm asking a policy thing that you disagree with Republicans
Okay.
or agree with Democrats.
Well, I do think it's important to say that we won't bridge that gap as long as one side believes the other is Nazis, and we just think the other side is misinformed. You know, I mean, thinking you're misinformed, that can be helped. You thinking we're evil, and not you, but I mean, so
Yeah.
unfortunately, like, I don't actually think that that gap can be bridged until that has to stop, because if you think someone's a Nazi, you're not gonna like be like, oh, you agree on socialized medicine maybe?
Sure.
So you see what I'm saying? But yeah, well, certainly we don't necessarily fall in line with Republicans. I'll let you guys go all the time.
I think one big flaw of the Republican Party is that there are a whole host of issues where when Democrats have bad ideas, Republicans offer no ideas. Healthcare is a great example. I don't know what the Republican healthcare platform is at this point. I think there are a bunch of issues where they just offer nothing other than saying Democrats' ideas suck. Well, yeah, they suck, but I'm afraid people will choose bad ideas over no ideas. God, if we're going to bash Republicans, I could be here all day. They're weak. They're useless. They're horrible. Strategically, they're horrible with marketing. If we're talking about a policy I disagree with Trump on, red flag laws would be one of them. Hopefully he'll change his view on that. I don't know what the hell I agree with Democrats on at this point. Is there something? Can we find unification somewhere and find one thing?
I know that I do. I'm not gonna lie. I'm struggling right now, and I'm trying really hard.
There's got to be something.
There is. I know because I just can't think of it right now. But I will say, look, one thing I'll say is that there are many things that Democrats are passionate about that, like, the passion behind the issue, I kind of am there with them on. And then they go into this almost like religious ideology where they lose me. Like the climate. Like, I think it's a very noble cause to take good care of our planet, right? And to do whatever we can to ensure that our planet remains as healthy and thriving for as long as it possibly can. But then when you go into climate change and carbon emissions and how the whole thing becomes very sort of like pseudo-religious to me, you lose me at that point. But I mean, I could certainly find common ground with Democrats about like ecological issues and saving the planet and things. And there was another one I was just thinking. And in terms of the Republicans, it's interesting because I believe I'm with him. Like I am a registered Republican. The party bothers me very, very much for very, very many reasons. But I actually think that the party is becoming kind of more and more socially liberal as time goes on. So I'm actually having less and less contention with some of their policies. I did not like it when the Republican Party was extremely rigid on abortion for a number of reasons. I think it's a losing issue for the Republican Party. I think it's costing us elections. And I personally think that I understand. I actually know people. I'm friends with people who are the product of rape. So believe me, I understand the value of life, even if that life is conceived in a hideous, violent act. But I cannot fathom forcing somebody to carry a pregnancy when it is the product of a brutal and traumatic experience in their life. I can't do it. So I do think that there needs to be exceptions for abortions. I do think that there has to be a period of time.
And I couldn't disagree with you more. So we're not a hive mind. I very much disagree with that.
Yeah, totally. But the thing is, I think that more and more Republicans are trending in that direction. I think they're both realizing it's a losing issue, and I also think that they're just softening on exceptions.
I'll just add really quickly. My response is probably going to be the most radical on this
Yes.
panel. Okay. I believe that, well, first of all, everyone here is operating on some type of worldview. So your moral justifications, when you go to vote, you're voting based off of your pre-existing worldview. So now the question is, whose worldview is the correct worldview? Me personally, I believe in God, and I believe that He is the standard of good. And I believe when a society deviates from that standard, you get chaos. And so what I believe about the Democrat Party is, to my knowledge, I can't think of anything I agree with them on. As far as Republican Party, there's lots of things I disagree with them on. This is why I say that I am not affiliated with any specific platform. I go where the truth is, and I have to recognize that there has to be an absolute standard for how humanity is supposed to operate. And if we deviate from that, we get the mess that we have now. And people could disagree with me on that. That's totally fine, but I think we're seeing the fruits of what that looks like.
Yeah.